All right. Hi, everybody. This is Patrick Argiro, aka Cousin Pat, and I cannot find my glasses. And today we are talking
I
to,
got him.
thank you. And today we are talking to you say that word,
Meteorologist.
him, Howard Bernstein,
See,
Howard Bernstein.
this is what happens when you miss rehearsal.
Yeah. Well, I did miss rehearsal. So he was with WUSA, CBS affiliate in DC for over 20 years. So he's a pretty big fixture over there. So welcome, Howard. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. You said was. I actually left June 9th after 20 years and 6 months and almost 2 weeks. Just needed a change of scenery.
Yeah, and I thought I said was with, but if I did say current with,
No, you said was with. I just wanted to reiterate that a little bit
yeah.
more so that nobody has any misunderstanding. And it was my choice, by the way. So,
Well, that's good to know because I was, when you have I call it a gig because I'm from New York. When you have a gig like that, you would think like that'd be something you'd want to stay at. But sometimes when did you lose your, this show is about inspiration and motivation. And I interviewed different people.
but I will tell you a couple of things. One, it's weird. I'm getting to a point now where I'm going to be 55 and my son's 21. He's leaving for his first real job after college. So some big life changes are coming my way in that regard. And you just wonder what else do you want to do with your life and where do you want to do it, right? I've been really lucky during the course of my life. And by the way, I'm from Long Island, but your New York is much more pronounced than my Long Island because when I went to school in Albany at SUNY, yeah, I'm a SUNY product, I went out of my way to try to lose the Long Island. And if you ever listen to the Long Island Medium, that lady, Teresa Caputo, I think her name is, she has, to me, the penultimate Long Island accent.
Yes.
Right? And you see it not when she's doing her like recording to the cameras. She's got a little bit different voice, but when she's just talking to the people and she's like not paying attention, boy, she drops into that Long Island accent like there's like nobody's business. Anyway, getting back to where I was. So here I was coming up on 55, been at the station for 20 years, son's moving away. A lot of things are going on. And maybe it's the COVID thing too. And I think the COVID thing inspired a lot of folks because we had all this time at home and to think about, what do you want to do with your life and where do you want to do it? And DC, well, it's been great to me. After 20 years, it's like, what's next? What are the growth opportunities for me where I'm at or within my company? And believe me, I tried to explore some of those. And it seemed as if moving on to something else was going to be the more likely path to more growth and more challenge than, what I've been afforded. And nothing but gratitude to Tegna and Gannett, now Tegna, for the years. So it's given me a good life, but I still felt I needed to make a change.
That's great. And
It's scary as hell, man.
Well, I got to tell you, you could always tell how successful someone is by the size of their bookshelf. So if you look at every podcast I've seen, every interview I've seen, the bigger the bookshelf. There's one guy I'm watching, he's got bookshelves all around him. Me, that's my bookshelf. So, and I might.
But no Emmys. I don't have any statues on my bookshelf, by the way, because I don't have any statues.
Okay.
I did not, it was early 2000s. There was a big tornado that hit La Plata, Maryland. And I thought we kicked ass that evening. And the weather department, we didn't even get a nomination. We got snubbed, so to speak, or at least from my perspective, we got snubbed. Maybe the judges back then felt they were doing it right. But, and at that point, I was like, you know what? Let somebody else play the Emmy game, win the Emmy game. Because I know to some people, it's really an important thing to have. And I don't want to belittle that achievement. To me, my life isn't going to be any better or any worse if I don't have a little golden statuette on my bookshelf. You don't have it on my bookshelf that means something to me. These hockey pucks mean something to me because we get pucks at the end of the season if we do stuff, right? And I became a high school hockey coach the last 5 years. So my son was playing a little youth hockey, decided to get into it. He stopped playing, but I was having so much fun coaching. I said, I'm going to keep coaching. right? So I got my level 4 certification from USA Hockey, and I'm working as a, not the head, but on the coaching staff of Northwest High School in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I'll tell you, we all wear different labels. You like Pat or Patrick?
Pat's fine. I go by cousin Pat, so
Right.
Pat's
Cousin
fine.
Pat, right? We all wear different labels, right? Some, right? You said you're a comedian, right? I don't know if you got former comedian. Excuse me. Therapist is another label. Son is a label. Maybe parent. I don't know. Brother, etc. Whatever. These are different labels. When I started coaching, it was one of those things I was still not comfortable with because it takes time to get comfortable in new things. The first time a kid said to me after practice, "See you later, coach," I was like, "You just call me coach. That's pretty cool." And what was really cool, not just the hockey puck, but a couple years back, the team was getting going. I didn't know it, but they had actually ordered jackets for the coaches, the management of the team. And I got a jacket. This is Coach Bernstein, and they handed it to me. I almost cried because I felt it was like one of the coolest things ever that they thought enough of me as a coach where I still had my own doubts that they would put it on a jacket, actually pay money, get it embroidered, just Coach Bernstein. I thought that was the freaking coolest thing in a really long time. So, you talked about 20 years on TV in DC, which is really cool, don't get me wrong. But another label I wear proudly is Coach Bernstein.
And I could say Coach Bernstein. Bernstein.
Yes.
Bernstein. See, guys, I could learn. So that is awesome. It's interesting you say that because I had something I wanted to ask you, but it's now eluding my mind. But I will ask you another question that's not eluding my mind.
Sure.
So you said you have a company. So what is it that did you?
No, I don't have a company.
Okay. I thought I heard you said company, and I was taking that. I have another question for you. You've been in this business over 20 years.
30.
Well, okay. Well, technically I'm right then.
Yeah, you are. But August 30th, 1989 was my first day of work at Wvue in New Orleans.
Yes, you worked in New Orleans. You also worked in Rochester, where I hung out for a little while, and I had a really good time there. It's just I lived in the city, and no one told me that the kids hang out every Thursday through Saturday. I mean, it was I thought, I'll live in the city, but I'm a 46-year-old man, so I may look young. Oh, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that.
You can't be 46.
No, I know. I'm only kidding. I am 46 though, but I was like, at that time I was in my 30s, and I was still like, Jesus, this music. It was, I was an old man when I was young. Did
you get over to like Nick Tahoe's for the garbage plate? And I still think the best pizza up there was at now Linda's, which used to be Camps, New York, with Lyle and Mount Reed. Little plug for Linda's. It's like being downstate. And Cousin Pat, there's one thing which I find kind of cool no matter where I live. When you find somebody from the New York area, right? At least for me, pizza is the first thing we go to. It's like, hey, where? And I say, all right, you're from New York. You know pizza. Where do you get pizza you like down here? And this is a universal theme I can have with anybody from the New York metro area, anywhere I am in the world, because it really comes down to pizza and bagels pretty much, and maybe Chinese food we'll throw in there. These are simple things. So here's I'll tell you a quick story about Rochester. So I worked at UHF, which is right there in Alexander and East Avenue, pretty much, if you know the city. It's just east of downtown, I don't know, half mile. And my dinner break was such so that at Tuesday nights back in 96, 97, at Camps, New York, now Linda's, and it's the same owner, they had 96-cent slice nights. 96-cent slice night. And like sodas were $1 out of the fountain. So we would call up Linda and say, hey, we need so many slice pies, because we would know how many people were coming, because we were there at 7 o'clock sharp. It's just with the dinner break with TV, because TV people, if you haven't learned, we live and die by the clock, right? You got the 5 o'clock news, it's coming on at 5. Whether my computer is working or not, it's coming on at 5. There's no stopping it. So TV people are generally some of the most punctual people you'll ever meet. Drove my son crazy growing up because I said, hey, we're leaving at 9. You know, not 9:05, not 9:08. We're leaving at 9. And he just could not conceptualize that. So anyway, we'd go out to pizza. A bunch of us dislocated New Yorkers. A couple of guys were from Douglaston. Actually went to Cardoza High School in Douglaston, which is like the Little Neck area, just near the Queens-Nassau border. And they didn't go to school together because the age difference, but they got me going there. And then there'd be a few folks who were locals, a bunch of dislocated New Yorkers or downstaters, and we would have the best time. Imagine like Cheers, the sitcom, if it took place in a pizza joint.
Yeah, I get it.
We'd meet every week. We would tell our stories. You know, my son was born Tuesday morning at like 3:47 a.m. My in-laws drove up. Before we went to the hospital, I had to get dinner, so I took him to Pizza Club first, and then we went to the hospital. And I was telling everybody about, oh, it was a crazy night. The son was born, and that would have been an episode, right? We should have recorded these things. It drives me nuts that we didn't when I look back. But anyway, sorry, you got me going to my Rochester. I enjoyed very much living there. The job, unfortunately, after 2 years there, they made me an offer to stay. I chose unemployment with a pregnant wife at the time as opposed to staying. And here's a little thing, Cousin Pat. There are many people who have these life decisions to make, right? What are you going to do? You left being a stand-up comic. At some point, you said, I'm going to do something else, right? You had to make, it's probably a tough choice for you, I imagine.
I loved it. I love stand-up comedy, but you know, I like eating better.
It's not easy. Like television is not an easy thing. And you're right when you said the gig. You're a gig guy. I told a colleague of mine who retired after 37 years. I told her, and I said, you knew this was a temporary gig when you took the job, right? All of us are temporary employees. You know, because none of us are irreplaceable, right? They may not find somebody that has my intellectual knowledge of things, institutional knowledge, excuse me, maybe intellectual too, but they'll find somebody to replace me. I have no doubt about that. So it was all there. Anyway, the point I was making was that a lot of times we come up with these very difficult decisions we need to make. And for me, and I did it this time, I 21 and a half years ago, my wife was pregnant. It was a very simple process. If you could take the emotion out of it, which is not easy. You know, you said you're a therapist, so you know a lot of people. You know, we're not Vulcans. We are emotional beings. We're human, and it came down to, for me, is could I identify my worst case scenario, right? If I leave, what's the worst case scenario for me going forward? You got to honestly ask yourself this. And I realized it was moving in with my in-laws. Not that I would, you know, I love my in-laws, but I don't want to live with them.
Hey, you and the rest of the world.
But if my wife loses her job, neither one of us are working, we've got a baby on the way, what are we going to do? Right? These are seriously legitimate questions that you need to be able to answer. And I realized, okay, we lived within our means, so we didn't have any debt. We owned our cars, we were renters. All right. Tell the apartment folks, we got to leave, we can't afford it, and move in my in-laws. And a few people are going to come after you. I mean, some apartment places might not let you out of a lease, but you know, if you're pregnant or not working, it's probably more trouble and it's worth to them to go after you.
It is.
But I think you should be upfront and honest, not just disappear in the middle of the night, leaving keys at the lease office, but maybe that's a situation you need to do. I don't know. So, all right. So I've answered question one. Realize I'll have a place to sleep, food to eat. Nobody's going to shoot me. My worst case scenario is better than some people's everyday scenario. I'm not homeless. I'm not living in my car, right? So when you could put it in perspective, what your worst case scenario is, good, that's step one. Step two is a real simple question. Can you accept, if push comes to shove, your worst case scenario? If you can say yes, you know what you are? You are free to say, no, thank you. Because if you are not willing to walk away from a bad deal or a bad situation, you kind of deserve it in many cases. It's on you. You have the power to change things. And it's not easy. This is not easy for me. It was not easy to walk away from a job that I had for over 20 years. Not easy at all. I mean, one of the most difficult things I've had to do in a very, very, very long time. And I'm going through that situation right now where I'm optimistic that, yeah, it's all going to work out, because it always does. but still the angst of, okay, I got mortgage that still comes every month, other bills. I've saved up for this possibility, but is it going to be a 1 month? Is it going to be 6 months? I don't know. And while it's scary, it's also exciting. And if, you know, I keep telling myself, it's life, it's living, right? If we knew the answers, that'd be really freaking boring. But going out there, betting on yourself, taking that risk, getting out of your comfort zone, experience tells me this is where we get some of our greatest growth and learning from. So it's not comfortable at all, but it certainly is a necessary, in my opinion, a necessary path that I need to go on.
No, I agree with you that, you know, sometimes the excitement in life is the journey and figuring those things out. And like for me, I'll give you an example. I was in IT, and I was miserable. I was miserable. I mean, I was a homeless guy, worked my way back out. I got my bachelor's degree while I was homeless. I always like to say finish the coursework because I don't like to lie. I finished the coursework while I was homeless. Then while
How did you do that? Where you said you were homeless? Where were you living?
I was living, so I lived in the Salvation Army homeless shelter in St. Petersburg. I lived there, and I always kept they give you paperwork, right? And I always said, you know what? No one's going to believe me. So I keep the paperwork just so no one says you're a liar.
Like, what kind of paperwork are they giving you?
They're just saying, hey, you, Patrick Argiro, you agree to follow these rules that are you know, no violence.
Oh, it's the contract to live in the homeless shelter.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then because I was a veteran, I was in the Air Force. I got to stay at, and shout out to Salvation Army, and shout out to HEP, which is called Homeless Emergency Project. And I stayed there. I was there for almost 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was different. I had, you know, you get money stolen, you have situations, you know, you're with other people that the mental health aspect isn't always the best.
And I was about to ask you about that because years ago when I was in New Orleans, I was doing work for Habitat for Humanity, another sidebar.
But I wanted to.
And I was going to go down to the Subway, get my little $3.25 combo lunch with a 6-inch sub, chips, and a drink, right? And there's this group from some college was down on their spring break doing their thing. And I was just doing it because I was off Thursdays and Fridays. And they were there for the whole week. And my wife was a teacher, so she was working Monday through Friday. So a lot of Thursdays was me and the retired guys. And if there was a group in like spring break, we'd work with them too. And they said, hey, you want to get lunch with us? I'm like, well, where are you going? They go, oh, we're eating at the soup kitchen, because they were staying in like the mission above at the church for their week of I guess their own missionary work, if you will. And I said, you know, I'd never been to a soup kitchen. Sure, I'll go. And man, it was a frightening and enlightening experience at the same time. And I was going to ask you this because one thing I noticed, at least at this soup kitchen at the time, and I don't know if soup kitchen's the right term, but I think we all know what I mean when I say soup kitchen. Most of the people, in my estimation, although I'm not a trained professional, either had some sort of alcoholic addiction, or mental illness. I would say that covered 95% of the people who were at the soup kitchen. And maybe I'm conservative in my estimate, but you actually lived in a homeless shelter. So, you know, you tell me.
That's pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate. You have, it's a lot. You want to hear a story that's so screwed up, and this is how naive I was. When I showed up to the homeless shelter, I'm dressed the way I normally would dress. And some guy says to me, "You're homeless?" I said, "Yeah, why?" And
how were you dressed? So if anybody doesn't know what that is, because I don't know what you mean by that.
I think I might have had on, maybe I had on, maybe I had on khakis.
So you're wearing Dockers and boat shoes or what? I mean,
sneakers, maybe khakis.
Tennis shoes for those of you in other parts of the country that don't say sneakers.
Yeah, if you don't, shame on you because they're sneakers. But anyway, tennis shoes. I know, like they say, subs in one area and hoagies in another.
I grew up, Heroes was what we said on Long Island.
Yeah. So I showed up at,
Torpedoes, po' boys. Yeah, right.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, and I want to talk to you because I'm actually from Long Island as well. But and there's something else I want to talk to you about too. So I show up there, I maybe got my khakis on and a shirt, maybe with a collar, and this guy goes,
Are you
"You're
popping the collar too?
what?"
Tell me you didn't pop the collar, because we'll end this right now if you were collar popping.
No, I didn't pop the collar. I wasn't cocky enough to pop the collar.
Couldn't pull it off.
Being homeless kind of kills your cockiness. And the guy says to me, "You look like an accountant." And I said, "Okay." So I'm homeless. No, that's not the story. This is the story. And I hope I don't get in trouble for this. I don't think I should. I'm so naive, right? I'm so naive. And this guy says to me, "Hey, I'll give you," and I had a car at the time, one of the few homeless people that had a car. He goes, "Listen, I left my phone at such and such. Would it's how naive I am, I swear. If I gave you $20, would you go drive me to pick it up?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Yeah, I could." In my mind, I'm like, I could use $20. Guess what I did? I was the driver of a drug deal. And I realized that afterwards. And then, I was like, oh my God, I just freaking I just took this guy to pick up crack. And I was a very naive guy. Still
Hey,
am.
I thought you were going to tell me they set you up and stole your car.
No. But you want to know something? This one particular guy, he was like, he ruled the homeless shelter. He never messed with me, but I saw him slap a guy. I know a guy that he slapped. He never bothered me. And I would always joke around when he say hi to me. I go, "Oh God, I didn't do nothing." I always use my humor to try to get out of situations. But when you're in a situation like that, you do sort of go to your environment. And I did have to at times turn into certain things. I remember one time I punched a guy with a key at a McDonald's because he was picking on me. And that was, and then I got back to normal.
With a key, it was like sticking out of your knuckle, sort of like.
Yeah, I stuck. Well, so imagine this is a key, and
Sure.
Yeah, I gave him a little poke right in the jawline, and I wasn't strong enough to knock him out.
That'll get somebody's attention.
I just wanted to, and then he said, "Oh, it was scary." I ran because I heard the lady she called the police, and I booked.
So I got to ask you a question. I got to stop here. How did you end up homeless? Because, for whatever be hard work, luck, the good grace, I've never been there. One of my thoughts when I left that soup kitchen was, I am so glad these things exist for people who need them. I will work my ass off to never be one of them.
Well, I did work my ass off to get out of it, that's for sure. But to answer your question, how did I get there? So here's how I got there. It's a kind of a sad story. It's not sad in the sense of, I can't be embarrassed about my past. It's my past, right? It happens. You grow.
You learn from it, hopefully.
Yeah, you learn from it. So I lived in Long Island, and I was dating this girl, and she had a lot of issues. And so one of her issues was, and I think that's her issue stemmed from childhood. So I'm trying to be mature about this, right? So she was very handsy. And she was very verbally abusive, physically abusive. And I allowed it because at that moment in my time, I went through a divorce previously, and I wasn't over the divorce, even years later. And to be honest with you, and my ex-wife will probably see this because I think we have mutual people. We didn't love each other, but anyway, but we got married. And the divorce, the way divorce happened, went down, it was just so devastating. And I never quite recovered at all. So I wound up going, and I'm very honest about this. This is why I think I'm a good therapist. You got your therapists who went to Harvard and they studied all this stuff, and that's great. But then you got a guy like me who lived a certain way, and
you can probably relate to some of these folks in a much more equal level than somebody who never was homeless, who never went through a divorce, who never, and always wonder about some of these people. I know another sidebar, right? When you go to
Yeah,
like the celibate priest for marital advice or something,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah.
how can he relate to you? How do they know? Or
Well, a lot, it's funny because a lot of the therapists I used to go to, what I'm learning or what I learned, I teach myself, I'm sidebarring myself now, but let me get back to the story.
sure.
So I wind up in a mental institution or a mental health facility called, I believe, the Carrier Institute or Carrier Clinic in New Jersey. So I'm going to give people advice. If you go to a mental institution, do not date anyone from a mental institution, because I know you, because listen, they might be sweet and hot or beautiful in there because they are being observed and monitored. But when you leave that facility, what brought them there will most likely reoccur. And so that's what happened. And I was in a place where I allowed that to happen. So I moved to Florida.
So you weren't cured, but they discharged you regardless.
Yeah, but I was better, but I wasn't cured. No, you're never cured. I call myself in remission right now. I have depression, anxiety, but I'm in remission, have been for a long time because I work on it and I reframe my thoughts every single day.
And it can be easy. And this is one of the things, just being in between work, that you don't go down that mental rabbit hole. And,
Yeah.
and the thing I learned many years ago is that being creative and productive were so important for me. And that's one of the reasons that now I'm back with Habitat, so I can feel like I'm making a difference in the world. I also miss the camaraderie of my work buddies and then the paycheck. So there were things I missed before the paycheck. And it just,
Right.
again, for up here.
Right. So, uh, just so I could answer the question, how I wound up homeless, I go down to Florida, I get a job, I am not into it. It's
That was the IT job?
It was an IT job. I was working, it was a contractor for Verizon. And then the way the pay structure was, it was very strange. You got paid per pole because it was like, I was doing I wrote a book on outside plant construction. At 24 years old, I had 20, I started investing in real estate. I had up to 20 properties at one point. But then when you lose that, you lose everything. Everything goes, that motivation, it goes.
So were these rental income properties you were doing?
Yes, yes, yes.
So
Yes.
this is another potential, thought of mine to set some passive income stream, but you make it sound terrifying if you lost everything.
No. Do it the right way. I know. I interviewed Eric Anders. He's a UFC fighter, former NFL player. And him and his wife, he gets once in a while he wins bonus of the night, or maybe once or something. I don't recall. But he takes his money and he buys property, and he's got 13 houses, and it's something. But in DC, I'm assuming everything is so expensive.
Well, I wouldn't do it in DC. You go to parts of the world, maybe there's some more smaller areas of the world where real estate is not as, it's much more easy to attain real estate in some other parts of the world.
Right. And Buffalo, New York was one of the areas that I bought, and some of them were nice and some of them weren't. So what happened was I go to Florida, and I don't have the education that, it started. I didn't have a bachelor's degree at that point. Everything I had worked was based on prior experience, and it worked out so far for me at that point. But then it was like, no bachelor's degree, no bachelor's degree, no bachelor's degree.
You hit that ceiling.
Yeah. And Florida was just different than New York. And I have to admit, I ran away from New York because the girl I was dating, she wound up living in my town. So we break up, and now she's living in my town, and I just couldn't cope.
Can you tell me where on Long Island you were? Because I'm from the Setauket area, which is Stony Brook and Fort Jeff on the North Shore.
I feel that's a little information. I'm kidding. I lived in East Islip.
Okay.
Islip
So
Terrace.
we're in Suffolk County too.
Yeah. So it's nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It still is beautiful. My in-laws are there. It's on the North Shore. If you're ever taking the ferry out of Fort Jeff, it's 5 miles west, and it's just that's one of the nice things. If you're coming back from New England, you get off the ferry in Fort Jeff, and I'm in their driveway in 10 minutes.
Oh, I love Fort Jeff. Port Jeff Station.
See,
I love.
back in the 80s, and Port Jeff was like Friday, Saturday night, people down there walking around, cruising in their cars, and it was a really cool place to be. I don't know what it's like now, but it was an awesome little summer hangout, tourist town on the North Shore.
Yeah, I had fun there. I've been there. It's been a while, but yeah. So that's how I wound up homeless ultimately. So you didn't ask me how I got out of it. You just asked me how I got there, and that's how I got there.
Right. All
So
right. Well, but I'm assuming getting out of it required through the shelter, through some therapy, through whatever self-realizations and time to put it all together.
yeah, and I went back to school, and I got some scholarships, some veteran financing. Uh, um, I'm not using the words right, but I was a veteran, so I got some finance.
Grants through that.
Yeah.
How did you maintain, or how did you turn the corner from whatever trough you were in? You had to be down at some point. You hit rock bottom, right? And then you're like, hey, I got to change what I'm doing. I mean, what was the epiphany for you, or that moment, or whatever it was that kind of kicked you in the butt to change things?
Well, what kicked me in the butt was, not that anyone belongs there, because look, I've interviewed several people, and I'm not done. I'm going to interview Ken Shamrock. I'm going to interview, I know I am, because we're talking. He's like an icon in the MMA world, right? But to me, him, the same interview as interviewing you, as interviewing this woman I interviewed who's at the lowest level, it doesn't matter. They're all the same. But what I felt was like, I don't belong here. This is not what I want for myself. I can do better for myself. I can do better, and I need to do better. And you know,
Was there a moment that it hit you, or is this just a gradual awakening?
it's gradual, and then there are moments that pop out, like when you're a grown man and you're living in a room with another grown man. You start to go, this is not right. Like, there are people my age who are thriving, who are married, who are, happily married maybe. And you just start to look at it like, listen, if you're a guy who started buying real estate at 24 years old, and you wrote a book that got published, not self-published, but a publisher came to me, something like that's going to drive you up a wall, in the sense of, I'm not achieving my full potential. So
And that's worse than if you were just not achieving at all, because you had the taste of success. You knew
yeah,
what. My dad had a great job when I was little, and then he lost it. I mean, as a kid, I've been talking 5, 6 years old. We went to the Bahamas, we went to London, and then boom, everything stopped. And so we went from having to not having. I wish we were poor the whole time, so I didn't know what I was missing. Right? I knew when I always felt this way. I knew what I was missing because it was no longer there. And it's like, why aren't we doing anything? Because there's no money, because that's not working. One thing led to another. And after 2 years, remember Sizzler?
of
My
course.
parents built a Sizzler when I was 11. They sold it when I was 18. So I grew up in a restaurant doing, you name it, washing dishes, cooking, waiting tables, etc. So when I know another little tangent here, but when I am out to eat and customer service, or something's going wrong, or anywhere for that matter, customer service is so simple in my mind, yet so many places either don't empower or educate or train their employees to do it. And it drives me nuts when something can be fixed in such a simple way. And people are going, they're just like grunting at you, because again, I think some business owners train their pets better than their employees. And it drives me freaking nuts.
Well, I got to tell you something. If you want to know my opinion on customer service, I want to be polite here.
It's your podcast, man. Be however you want to be.
Well, I am. I just, I can't say, if I'm going to state that I have a PhD in philosophy, and then yell about things, that's kind of hypocritical. So I'm trying to be balanced, but
But you can articulate your point without yelling.
yeah, I could, you're right.
But sometimes yelling is a better choice.
No, sometimes yelling is good, and you could
Necessary.
state a fact without you could state a fact without anger. You could yell. Sometimes you could yell without being angry. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. So I think customer service, if you want to know the truth, customer service starts at the home. I mean, if you need a grown man to tell you at 18 years of age to say hello, like in the trainings, any job I ever had, I was a bar back. I worked as a cook in one of these places for a day. I didn't even go back and collect my check. Sorry about that, whatever restaurant that was. Um, I was always very polite, but I can't even say I was taught to be polite. It just felt natural. Like, yes, no, no, sir, yes, sir, especially after the military. It's like, I had uncles and aunts telling my mom, like, he doesn't have to call me sir. And I
And
was
sir
like,
and ma'am, right? I find military people will call me sir, or they'll use the word ma'am. And I know a lot of
they
women.
call you ma'am? That's
No, they don't call me
crazy.
ma'am, but like my wife or other people.
It's
I
a
just
joke.
military people use ma'am in general. I just know there are a lot of ladies who don't like being called ma'am, right? Especially if they're not that old. They feel like that's reserved for an older lady. And then, so see, I don't use ma'am. Now you've got me into one of my little, if I was ever being on stage like a stand-up comic, I might work this one in. I don't use ma'am because if you call an older lady miss, it's like you're flirting, flattering her a little bit. And if you call a younger lady ma'am, you're going to piss her off. So simply put, you can miss with ma'am, but you'll never miss with miss.
Yeah, but the thing about miss, which I learned it a long time ago, is no, yeah, I guess you could say, yeah, you could say miss. What I always have a problem is when I don't know, when I'm writing a letter or if I'm talking to someone and you don't know if they're married. I always
I thought
remember.
Ms. was acceptable for either. That's what I learned in like grade school or something. MS period, Ms.
Yeah, I thought unless they're married, but if you don't know they're married, then
I,
yeah.
I always thought it was the safety one, like
Yeah.
blood type O or something, right?
Well, you're probably smarter than I am. I could tell by your bookshelf. So,
Really? There's not much on that bookshelf. There's a lot of pictures, not too many books.
no, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm almost forgetting that I'm being recorded because I've talked to people where they forget they're being recorded, and that's the best thing.
No, exactly. Look, we're a couple of New Yorkers, a couple of Long Islanders, if you will. We obviously both have the gift of gab. So,
Yeah. And, it's so funny is I even hate that this is in the screen. So look at that. Now it's gone. I'm having a major rainstorm right now in my house, but I live in the country now, right? So I decided to go.
Where are you? I don't even know where you are.
I will give you the bigger version.
I'm in the upper Montgomery County, of about 20 miles north of DC.
Okay, I am in a town called Lake Wales, and Lake Wales, Florida, and I'm in a little tiny community within that town, so small that we don't even have a postman. So you have to go get your mail. I swear, when I go to the chiropractor, do you remember the movie Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox?
Sure.
That's what it's kind of like. If there was a car accident about a month ago, 3 hours, the one road in, one road out kind of deal. So
what part of Florida is that? North, central?
I'm in Polk. I could give you the count. I'm in Polk County.
Okay.
So it's an hour from Tampa, which isn't bad. 45 minutes from or Orlando, which isn't bad. But Florida's strange like that, where
I lived in Gainesville for 6 months back in late February to August of '89.
Where were you?
Gainesville.
Gainesville. Okay.
Back in '80, my first job, I couldn't get a TV job. So I took a job at an environmental consulting firm. And 6 months later, I did find a TV job. So I left, but I enjoyed my 6 months in Gainesville.
Let me ask you something. I don't know when you were, when did you leave Long Island?
Well, I started school in the fall of '84.
Okay.
Graduated December of '88, and it was February of '89 when I moved down to Florida.
Okay, so I'm going to say a name, and you just say you say yes or no if you know who she is. Jill Nicolini.
No.
Okay, so
I did go to Ward Melville High School.
okay,
I did not play lacrosse though, but lacrosse was king and still is, I think, at Melville.
so I'm going to be interviewing. Well, I'm not interviewing. She's going to be interviewing me, and that's a question I have. Oh, let me ask you this. I did an interview today on Sirius Radio, and I want now that I'm listening to you talk and listening to you the way you're like asking me questions back and forth, you're clearly in the biz. I did not.
I've done a few interviews, and it's funny I'm going to cut you off for half a second, and I'll let you go. The younger colleagues I have, whether they are doing reporting or sometimes they'll come in and they'll be in the studio, and maybe they'll be doing traffic for the first time, whatever. And I tell everybody, and this is for anybody who's going to be in broadcasting or radio, whatever, I think listening and reacting is as, if not more important than getting to your agenda. So as a meteorologist, right, I'll go and I'll do the forecast and I'll make the graphics. But when the anchor's tossing to me, I got to listen and react. And they may ask me a question that takes 30 seconds to answer, and I only have 3 minutes. All right, now I'm down to 2.5. But if I blow them off and I just kind of whitewash that interaction, it's just not good TV, right? And it's also an opportunity for me to maybe look like an expert on something. It's also an opportunity for me maybe to get a funny line in it. They set me up. It's an opportunity for me to get myself, to ingratiate myself with my audience and my viewers. And I think the listening and reacting, not just in the studio, but in this case, you're saying some things to me which are interesting. And if anybody's watching this, I don't even know why Patrick wanted to interview me. We're on LinkedIn. He just reaches out, says, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?" I'm like, absolutely, right? I didn't know what we were going to talk about today. And I'm going to ask you this, why me, right? So I'm just curious on that. And but listening and reacting, and these are things that just, after being on TV for 30 years, you learn some tricks. And the great part is those colleagues who are willing to take in that information, who want to learn, who want to be coached, who want to get better. Then, of course, you have some who, at the ripe old age of 26, they're in DC. Of course, they're great. They know it all. They don't want to listen to you. Okay, that's their choice too, right? Right.
I won't say who the people were involved in this, but I'm watching because I don't want to make it political. But there was this young man on a TV show talking about an older woman. Okay, I'm going to say it. Screw it. It was so ET Entertainment Tonight, right?
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, well, they have ET Canada, and it's very popular.
In Canada.
Yeah, and so they were talking about the Sharon Osbourne thing, and this
got kicked off the View back a couple months back.
Well, not the View, but
you know what I mean. The talk. Excuse me.
Talk,
the CBS version of the View. My bad.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about the details because
right.
but I'll
Google
tell you.
It, people.
What's that?
I said Google it if you want to know. If you don't.
Well, she got kicked off. Essentially, she was getting sick of being asked about her friend. Google it. And so she got kicked off. And I'm listening to this 26-year-old reporter talking about how ignorant she was. And I'm going to myself, here's a 76-year-old woman, or 75, she's in her 70s for sure. Married to Ozzy Osbourne, had to go through all these problems. Best friends with Elton John, so she's anti-gay, but her best friend is gay, but that's okay. And I'm listening to this guy talk about this woman. I'm going, this woman, and it's nothing about, she could be she is a Democrat, but it doesn't matter. She has more knowledge in her pinky than this kid has in his whole brain. And I'm listening to this kid be so demeaning because it's like, jump on the woman who's getting killed right now. And I don't like that. I don't like.
But this is where I think journalism, if you will, broadcasting has changed a lot in the last, I don't know if it's been 5-10 years, where instead of just reporting the facts and allowing the audience to decide, many of these organizations and companies are encouraging their broadcasters to chime in, to put their spin on it. And I've been part of internal discussions where, we would say X. I'm like, you can't say that because then it looks like, you're voicing your opinion. I'm like, well, isn't it so? I'm like, or what do you think? I'm like, it doesn't matter what I think. What I think's irrelevant. I say, you can say that the statement was controversial as opposed to saying, oh, the so-and-so in the racist statement that so-and-so said. I'm like, well, what do you mean saying the racist statement? No, which I may think that, but saying so-and-so, which a statement, controversial statement, which some have called racist, right? There's a different way to term that or to say that without it looking like you're taking a side. But many of these journalistic outlets are taking sides, and that I don't think that's good overall for the democracy. When you have the fifth estate, if you will, that's not just reporting now. They have to be activists. I think we lose something in that.
True. And I can't say he's a friend. He's not an enemy. But when I was doing comedy, I have this friend now. He very smart, very nice, very encouraging guy. And now he works for I think it's MSNBC. And I watch him on there and I read his posts, and it creates such division what he writes. And I get upset. I don't get upset. I just look at it and go, oh, you don't even you shut off your comment section. So you don't even want to deal with the comments. You just say these things and you're not even, and he's talking about stuff like, for example, forget it. But
I'm going to give you a story. My son went to a college for a year. He left high school 2 years early. He went to a school called Simon's Rock in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, which is for kids who go to school, want to go to start college early, whether they're bored with high school or having issues, whatever. They just start college, whether there be a junior or senior level normally in high school. So they're all starting. And a lot of these kids are expressing themselves intellectually, sexually, gender, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And my kid says, he tells me this story where one of his, I don't know, classmate or fellow students said, well, you can't have an opinion on transgender because you're cisgender. And me being ignorant, this is 4 or 5 years ago, cisgender, what's cisgender?
Yeah, what is that?
He goes, well, that's when you identify with the gender you were born with. And I said, so my response was, just innocently, isn't that normal? He said, no, you can't say normal, you'll offend somebody. So I go, little sigh, I go, so wait a minute, let me get this straight. So-and-so labels you as X and immediately says your opinion is discounted and worthless because they label you as X. I go, that's effed up, right? You're not the problem, they're the problem. And the reason I'm saying this is you're saying your friend, maybe acquaintance, colleague, I don't know, friend.
Now I would say acquaintance, because
acquaintance shuts off their comments. And I've had this overarching thought recently that we've devolved as a society where so many people are so entrenched in their thoughts, right? And they don't want to listen to somebody who has a thought that isn't theirs. Oh my God, somebody doesn't think like me. I can't hear that. And when you're not listening to somebody, right? When you're not hearing what they're saying. And I'm an opinionated guy. I'll admit it up front. But I'd like to think that I will listen to you. And if you have a strong argument as to why I'm wrong, you can sway me. Convince me that the power of your logic is better than mine. Okay, I will change my mind. But even though I self-describe myself as an opinionated individual,
which is good. And I saw a story, and I give the guy credit. So Yahoo News typically goes one way. So I'm going to be clear. I'm an independent, and I'm like a Joe Rogan, except less successful.
You have more hair.
Well, more hair, but less successful in a lot of ways. But he is clearly a Democrat who there's Democrat, and then there's, and that's what happens. And I want you to get another job so you don't have to respond to that because you're in DC. But I kind of go that way, but I like policies on the other side too. But there was this gentleman who posts a story how they couldn't remove a flag that said F Biden. And he writes this whole story, and I'm like, Well, of course they can't remove the
It's
flag.
First Amendment protection, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
like unless it says kill him, which it didn't, you
Which is
can't.
it's a different thing. If you threaten somebody, that's illegal, right? There are
Right.
consequences in a threat. But I've always said, I once made a comment on TV when Pelosi ripped up the president's State of the Union speech. And the following morning, we were asking, "Oh, what do you think? Should you have done that or not?" And we were opening our show, and the fourth shot, the fourth shot means all of us, the anchors and me and everybody. So there's four of us at the desk. I said, "Look, some people may not like what I have to say, but I wish you wouldn't have, because I wish you would have taken the high road, because I just want somebody to take the high road."
You said that on air?
I said that on air. I just want somebody to take the high road.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a guy who said, "Oh, that I should basically just shut up and stick to weather and not give my opinion." And I had like 20 seconds before I had to be on TV, so I hung up the phone. And I really wish I could have responded to the man, where I had a few more moments. I just didn't have it, because I said, well, so wait a minute, because you don't like what I have to say, I shouldn't say it. What are we, North Korea? We're allowed to have different opinions. We're allowed to think outside the box. How boring would it be if we all had the same haircut, dress the same? You know what I mean? It's our differences which really make it interesting, and our diversity, which is, getting back to the roots of our country. That's the strength, the fact that we can have dissenting opinions and express them, where we seem to be getting away from that. And I'm not pointing the finger at one or the other, because I think there's plenty of blame to go around on being myopic in your viewpoints. But it was it was such a moment where I just wish I could have spoken to that gentleman and asked him, does he prefer the North Korean way to the American way?
Right. And over the phone, he'd probably be much different than if you had him in person. In person, he'd probably be more respectful. But
Perhaps, but I thanked him for calling and watching, and I'm sorry he felt that way, is all I said. I just didn't have time to elaborate. So,
you know,
getting back to customer service.
oh, you're okay. Yeah, right. Customer service. Well, I want to say one more thing is people confuse things very easily. And Paul, like, for example, you're in DC. I know I actually said on an intro video I made that I was interviewing you, and I said a meteorologist in DC. It sounds like it could be a sitcom, because you're like in DC, but you're the weather guy. So so you're like out of it, but you're in it, and it's like, I don't know. I think that'd be neat. But when
Well, I did get it. Over the 20 plus years, the folks who I met, whether they be from the political spectrum, the entertainment spectrum, the sports spectrum, I met a lot of really cool people over the years, and that was part of the neatness. When you're working in a big market, a lot of people come into your TV station. Where
right.
when I was in Rochester, we didn't see anybody.
But that's what I want people to understand. This guy I'm talking to right now, this is a big market guy. This is DC. You got DC, New York, LA, Miami. But this is a DC.
Lou Gossett Jr. was at the station maybe 10, 12 years ago, and he was doing something charitable there. And so a very nice guy, right? And my wife, I'm telling her, she's like, "Oh, Lou Gossett, did you go mayonnaise? From Officer and Gentleman." I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, "No, I didn't go mayonnaise." And then I had the chance to interview Billy Bob Thornton for the Asteroid Farmer movie came out. I went to see a preview, and I got to talk to him, and he was pretty cool too. And my wife's like, "Did you ask him about Angelina?" I'm like, "I'm not asking him about Angelina Jolie. It's not going to happen." And another quick one, John Voight, when they were doing the National Treasure, the sequel. What that book was, it Book of Secrets, whatever the second one was, with Nick Cage and those guys, and so they filmed a lot of it in Washington. So he comes by, because we had a 9 o'clock newscast. Well, it was sort of eclectic, some news and interviews. It was a lot lighter than a traditional newscast. So Voight is in the newsroom, and as he's walking out, there's one of the other guests was some DC advocate or something. He's like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Voight. I really appreciate you coming to our city and filming here. And I see Voight, and I'm right there, and I go, "I just appreciate that you're a Seinfeld reference." And Voight looks at me and just goes, I think he appreciated the fact that, I was just treating him like anybody, not sucking up to him and not fawning over him. And I appreciated John Voight's really casual approach to that. But there were so many cool people. Jerry Cooney, speaking of Long Island, met Jerry Cooney when he was in the station many years ago, and he was a very nice man. Big, my God, those guys are big.
Well, yeah, of course.
Huge, but really
Hey,
super guy.
gotta tell you, smart choice not asking John Voight about Angelina. They don't have a they don't have a
Yeah, I know.
they don't have a great relationship. But I want to say something because I don't. Here's what I want to explain for me, and I think it's if this gets across to anybody. Even if you're on social media, you don't have to be mean just because you have the ability to. And I'm going to tell you something. Here's what, so you won't figure out who I am. I want to be clear about 2 points. I didn't like that they were, listen, Biden won, he won. But I didn't like how they were treating him in the sense of, this is a guy who lost 2 children and a wife. And the way they were talking about it, I was like, hey, this is a human being, guys. Okay, this is a human being. Now, on the other side, you get Seth Rogen, who's Canadian, and he likes to puff Magic Dragon. Puff, I'm trying to do his accent. And Paul Ryan asks him for an interview, a picture with his children. And Paul Ryan gets destroyed in front of his children because he doesn't understand, Seth Rogen, that Paul Ryan is not Donald Trump. John McCain clearly disagreed with Donald Trump. So it's like, you can't just lump everybody. And that's the thing with me. I don't want to be lumped.
Well, but you see this both the R's do to the D's, the D's do it to an R's. I'm like, this, as I went back earlier, you label somebody as X and you don't want to listen to them. You've discounted their value or their opinion.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You end up on your little corner, very myopic in your own perspective.
Yeah.
And the progress gets halted, and we don't find compromise. We don't find middle ground because it's just, you suck, no, you suck, no, you suck, no, you suck, and you don't get anywhere. It's like, if you're constantly insulting your opposition, why do you think they're going to compromise with you? And
right.
Either party, I don't care, D or R, doesn't matter to me. I'm a registered independent, by the way, as well. So
me too.
I will put that out there.
Which is probably the safe thing to say.
Well, but I live in a county which I think is like 70% Democrat. So we know when there's an election here who wins, and I don't think that's good for the county. I just don't. I don't think any county, whether they be 70% Republican or 70% Democrat, I just don't think when you're effectively one party rule that is overall healthy.
Do you want to know something? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I like you. And because I like you, because I like you, I can tell that if you and I were having a conversation or a beer man to man, we would be doing this where we'd just be talking and talk like we're old friends. Well,
I think the thing about it, and again, I'm going to go back to us being maybe it's where we're from, and I think it's part of who we are. I find a lot of Long Islanders being very straight shooters. Honest.
Yeah, of course.
And people say New Yorkers, oh, they're rude. No, we're not rude. We're just direct. I learned over the years, and if there are people from the South who are listening, I'm about to give you an observation, and again, it's my observation, but I find that in many cases when I'm dealing with Southerners, and I have family in Alabama. My sister's husband is a doctor down in Birmingham. They moved there after med school. So I spent a lot of time, because my mom, the last 7 years of my mom's life, she lived in Birmingham near my sister. So I spent a lot of time, probably 3 months of my life in Birmingham. I spent those 6 months in Gainesville, almost 5 years in New Orleans, which is sort of the South, but not exactly, because it's its own little world. But when you ask a Southerner a yes/no question, and I am oversimplifying it, admittedly, but first you visit, then you negotiate, then you get an answer. You ask a New Yorker yes/no question, and we say yes or no, then we're on to the next thing. And these are cultural differences. And it's not that New Yorkers per se are rude. Just that we're direct and more direct than people in other parts of the world. So once you understand the differences, like if you're from the North, and I was standing on line once at the airport in Birmingham to get a rental car, and it took me 10 minutes with one person in front of me because 5 of those minutes, the 2 ladies were discussing a grits recipe.
Oh yeah,
but this is a Southern thing. It's not an intelligence thing. And I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence here, because it's not an intelligence thing. It's just the way they communicate. I find folks in the Midwest, maybe Missouri, Kansas, let's say, are not as direct also. They'll take more time beating around the bush than New Yorkers again. We just get to the point, right? And again, I find this is a cultural difference in different parts of the country. Now, I haven't spent enough time or either there or with people from a place to give you more than those two examples. But those are just two clearly observational anecdotes from me. But I think there's some truth to it. That's why I'm telling you these stories.
And I appreciate that. And you know, I was in Texas. I spent quite a bit of time in Texas. You know, I'm out of MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, but Lackland is where everyone goes, or at least it was, or Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. Then I was in Wichita Falls. So I can't even say I spent too much time in Texas.
Falls. There ain't much in Wichita Falls. Having you know, when I was in Oklahoma City, I did some storm chasing around the Wichita Falls a few times, and you know, there's not a lot out there in Northwest Texas.
There's not. And then my ex-wife, which I hope is doing very well, is from Texas. And the thing is so funny is I'm from New York, and there'd be times, like one time she came over for dinner, and with my dad, who's, may he rest, was at this time he died at 150 pounds or 70 pounds because he had gastric bypass, not because he got sick. He died from COVID, unfortunately. But this was big, strong, 6'1", 330 pounds, looked like Tony Soprano met Mio Serrano. He had the face like Mio Serrano's dad. Who's that guy?
Paul Serrano. No, Paul.
Paul. Yeah, Paul Serrano.
Paul Serrano.
But big.
Gandolfini's friend.
Yeah, right. And one time, two quick stories. One time, my then girlfriend, ex-wife says, "Why is your dad yelling?" I said, "He's not. He's just talking." And the second time is where they came to visit us in Texas. And we're online for like 15 minutes. And my dad is just like, what is, I go, "Dad, this is tech. This is how they do it." It's like, they talk, they take the bag and and I said, I had to get used to it too. He goes, but he goes, "But Pat, 15 minutes to like, just put it in a bag and go." I said, "That this is Texas. This is how they do it." And yes, it's frustrating. It's like, and I fight the urge even here in Florida, which a lot of New Yorkers are from, but I'm in like a little town. And so you just deal with it. You just, you know, and
has anybody called you a damn Yankee?
No.
See, in Oklahoma, there was a guy I worked with, the character, Pat Finney, worked on the floor crew. Good guy, very fond of him. I don't know if he's still with us or not, but when I was leaving, he would call me a damn Yankee. He says, "Well, I guess I can call you a Yankee now." I'm like, "What's the difference?" He goes, "Yankees visit." So, and that was his simple. So I was a damn Yankee when I was living there, but just a Yankee when I was visiting.
Yeah, I've had some experiences when I lived in Dallas, Fort Worth that were not pleasurable. He was kind of yanking my chain. We got along, but I'm sure there were some people who have whatever bias, you know, with you with your thick Long Island, New York accent. Sorry, you got one. That probably just quickly label you as X, judge you as Y, and have had enough of you. Well, we would fight sometimes too, because she would think I was saying something. I was like, "I don't know what you're talking." Like, it was just it was opposites attract, but at the same time, too opposite. And so, but I got to tell you, I learned a lot of lessons from you, and that's really great. But I wanted to get back to two things because we're talking so much that it's almost like we're forgetting. So Jill Nicolini, I'm doing a podcast with her. She is, I don't know if she got the stature that you did with that term that I can't pronounce, but she did.
Meteorologist.
What you said. And she did that in Channel 11 PIX News in New York City. And everyone would talk about it. And I'm kind of curious about your opinion, where I'm going to talk to her soon. I'm going to tell her, like, WPIX started this whole thing where I honestly believe this. Every Fox News reporter, CNN reporter, they owe 1% of their salary to Jill Nicolini. Here's why. You're a very handsome man, Howard, but you turn on the television and there's the weather guy. All of a sudden on PIX, it was like Victoria's Secrets. And it was,
And I can't compete with that, by the way. And this is another part of the business, the profession that I've chosen. I know it's part of the game. There are times where you have folks who are hiring, and God, I hope they're not going to hold it against me if anybody's watching this and thinking about this. But the reality is sometimes, you could be the best meteorologist, best guy on TV out there, but if they're looking for a female, they're looking for a female.
Howard Stern would talk about this. He would say on his station,
Yeah, you'll never see it in an ad, but it's just how it is, and I accept that as part of the part of admission and entry to the industry. That they have to look. They want to be diverse. They want to have different voices, and I get that. So I don't begrudge anybody. It's just part of what it is.
hey, as a man, honestly, I don't mind. But it was interesting that switch, and even Howard Stern talked about it. It's like you turn on Channel 11 News, and it's like the anchor was beautiful. They had the guy John, I forget his name, John. He had the beautiful hair, but everybody else, it was like, and the weather girl was Jill Nicolini, and
Or
now,
meteorologist.
well, I don't know if she
Well, the term weather girl is interesting because there are people on television who do weather who don't have the education. Then there are people who do have the education. So you have this whole argument going on in the meteorological community of women, because women in STEM are very important. Like, don't call me a weather girl, I earned my degree. And while I can certainly support and respect that, then you have people on TV, some, and I'm just talking about women, and there are some men too, but when you have women on TV who are doing weather who aren't meteorologists, they're not helping the cause of the women on TV who are meteorologists, who are saying, judge me for my intellect, not my beauty. If I just happen to be beautiful as well, that's a bonus. And but it is a visual medium, and people say, hey, Howard, if I want to be on TV doing weather, what sort of education do I need? And I say, well, it depends on who's doing the hiring.
Okay, so it doesn't say she's a meteorologist, and it looks like she did traffic. I thought she did the weather. I could have been, I really did. But anyway, my point was that they're going that route.
Well, WSBN in Miami might have been the first one, that Sunbeam station down many, many years ago.
No, we're sticking with my BIX. Yeah.
Well, you stick with PIX, maybe SBN or it influenced them or vice versa, but WSBN in Miami, Sunbeam station, and probably 20 years ago or more. Besides having gorgeous people on air, they have the big flashy graphics and the double-decker news sets and stuff, and really just boom, big and flashy and zipping noises and sound effects and beautiful people, and really just kind of changed in many ways how news was going to be presented.
I lived in Miami, so I know what you're saying, and now I live in a small town, and I prefer it much better.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've told people, and having worked in Rochester, which I think was market 77, I think DC is 8 or something. That's a top 10 market, one of the biggest in the countries. That the goal for many when they're starting, I was like, oh, I want to get to New York, or I want to get to LA, or Chicago, or one of the Boston, Philly, one of the big ones, Atlanta.
I like Chicago. Yeah, Chicago.
But finding that balance of market size and quality of life, right? And you just got to figure out what you want to do. As I said to a lot of people, and a question that's been haunting me for years is, what do I want to do and where do I want to do it, right? And that's the simplest way of putting it. It's like with your life, because we spend a lot of time at work, although a lot of it can be done remotely now. But really, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What's important to you? Is it important to climb the career ladder? Is it important to be closer to the family? Is it important to be close to the beach, the mountains, the ski area? Whatever it is for you that works for you, you have to figure out. And there are some great smaller communities in America that it works fantastic. Some people love the city, and that's fine for them. It just, it's not one size fits all, but what works for you.
Yeah, and I think there's wisdom with age. And as a 46-year-old, if you put me here in this town at 26, I'd go crazy. I'd be like, what am I doing here? Let me ask you this, because I have you, and we could talk off air too. So
no, this is it, man. I'm never talking to you again.
No, well, we're best friends now. So so let me ask you, how do I like the long format, right? And I'm a talker. So this radio interview I did on Sirius today, it was 15 minutes, but honestly, it felt like 5. And I just couldn't, and Joe Rogan talks about this, like those quick little blurps. I couldn't get who I was across. I couldn't, the producer said, how'd your interview go? I said, I think it went okay, but I couldn't, like, I didn't have the chance to promote anything as far as like, oh, look me up here. I didn't know how to.
Well, I think a couple things. Have some bullet points, have some notes of things you want to make. When I'm doing a weathercast, right, I may have a rundown, I put up. The least important things are at the bottom, because I may run out of time and have to go only my first 5 things and then have to jump to the forecast. Maybe I have 8 things I wanted to talk about, but I blew all my time on the first 5. So the really important part of the forecast, the stuff that's going to impact the most people, as opposed to maybe the interesting tidbit, right? Prioritize what's important and get that out as soon as you can so you cover that, or even before you wrap up, so that you don't run out of time without saying what you needed to say.
Right.
And sometimes you have to do a little prep ahead of time, put it down on paper, figure out what it is. Also, and I know this long format is really giving us opportunity to go on for minutes with answers at times, but if you're being interviewed, if you can say something like 10 or 15 seconds for an answer, much better, because if I'm ever doing a story where I have to interview somebody and they give me a 45-second answer, I may only have a minute and a half for the entire story. I can't use 45 seconds. Maybe I'll find 10 seconds in there I can use, but if I can't use any of it, guess what? A point they were going to make in their words, I'm going to have to paraphrase in mine.
Yeah.
And I would always, if I were ever doing media training, I would tell anybody, figure out what your message is in 15 seconds. If you can do it in 15 seconds, the odds of it being on air or used in the reporter's story are much greater than if you can do it, if you can't do it in 15 seconds, because they just don't have the time. And the length of stories also has gotten shorter over the decades, because people's attention span gets shorter. It's like, they're all looking at this, they're skimming through, they see a headline, they might, or they're just going to keep swiping the timeline on Twitter or whatever until there's something that catches their attention to actually click.
That's the thing. Our attention spans are shorter unless there's something interesting. Hence the podcast, because podcasts are so popular and it's long form, but usually you got to catch somebody within a short period of time. I really quickly want to say I love Jill Nicolini because I called her a weather girl. I'm sorry, I'm going to meet you soon, and I hope we, hit it off. So now you say what you're going to say, and then I'm going to ask you 2 more questions.
All right. You never did tell me why me. Why did you reach out and say, hey, I want to have you on the podcast? So
okay,
my own curiosity, my own vanity, whatever.
Okay, so I get this interview. Okay, so it all goes back to Jill Nicolini. I get this interview with Jill Nicolini. She's the host of this podcast. I asked the producer. They said she gets 700,000 to 2 million views. I don't know if that's true, but whatever. I take a word for it. So now I'm starting like, okay, well, I look at this podcasting as not that I want to be famous, because I really don't. I look at it as an opportunity to help grow my business and do some charity work, because I like volunteering. I used to give sandwiches out to the homeless. I would talk to them. Being homeless, I get that. So I write to people and I'm like, hey, would you like to do a story on a guy, me? Thinking, let me just try to get a little bit of whatever.
And which you did to me, and I let you know I'm not working right now.
Right. And when you said I'm not working, I looked at it and I looked you up and I was like, I wonder why he's not working. And then I'm like, this guy is this is a major market. And I said, well, let me ask because I've asked other people, but they're working. So maybe I asked other people in your industry. Well, I say your industry, the news. And I said, hey, would you be interested? Would you be interested? But I know they have to be very careful. And then I don't
have to be as careful right now because I don't have a current employer to worry about, but I do have future employers to worry about.
Right, and I know that. That's why. Listen, Michael K. He's the announcer.
I know who he is.
Yeah, okay. He used to say on his show.
And his wife, by the way, used to be in news. Jody Apple.
Yeah, and hey, Michael K. Just real quick, good for you, bro. But anyway.
Oh no, yeah, she's fantastic.
Oof. Anyway, You know what that means. So, and seems like a very
I think
smart.
everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Hey, I'm a therapist, but I'm still human. Beautiful woman, and was very good in New York. She was on Fox 5 in the mornings, I believe, and
She
very
was
good.
also on PIX, I think,
Yeah,
before she left.
she
Yes.
jumped around, and he's a nice guy. So he used to say, when I have a guest on my show, whether it was in studio or on the phone, he says a guest in my show is like a guest in my living room. And that's what I think is missing. It's all about sometimes now you got to get the clickbait, or you got to get that thing that goes viral. And so I know you coming on here, what your situation is, that I'm not going to like put you in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. I'm not looking to like, oh, look what happened here. And let's, that's not who I am. Uh, as a Long Islander, not that I knew you were from Long Island, I was raised Italian. I was raised Catholic. I'm a Christian now, but I would not be disrespectful to anyone. So why you was, here's a meteorologist. He's not working. I'm trying to get interesting guests. Everybody's equal to me. He worked in DC for 20 years. And I'm looking at his resume and I'm going, that'd be cool. And also I'm interviewing all these MMA guys, which I love. I love, because I love MMA. I love watching it. And you're my second non-MMA guest.
I'm
And
too small. They'd kill me if I ever stepped in the octagon.
yeah, yeah, those guys you don't, dude, you don't even want to like, I'm scared to be disrespectful to them over a Zoom camera. So,
By the way, speaking of my high school, I mentioned Ward Melville, not MMA, but Mick Foley, who you may know from the wrestling world.
Mick Foley. Oh yeah, he was
Captain Jack, whatever and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, he graduated a year ahead of me.
Awesome.
He played lacrosse, as I recall, and I think he had a buzz cut back in high school, and his dad was the athletic director of the high school. So, we knew each other a little bit, as though we didn't hang out, but we went to the same high school. So there are, and Mets, Mats rather, the Mets pitcher Mats.
Okay.
Stephen Matz, I think his name is. He's another Ward Melville graduate.
What's his name? Because my cousins are
Stephen Matz. I don't know if he's still with him, but a few years ago, was a guy named Stephen Matz, M-A-T-Z, I think.
My cousin will know him.
But anyway, and getting back to it being in between jobs, I said on one of the videos I put on, I believe it's important, especially when you're not working, to be creative, productive, and do what you can to keep busy, so that your mind doesn't go down that negative rabbit hole that it can. And the thing I love about Habitat for Humanity, as we get back to volunteering, is that
yes,
I don't like giving stuff away for nothing unless somebody is truly can't take care of themselves, right? And then I think we have a moral obligation to help those people. But helping people help themselves, which Habitat does when you have to put in the sweat equity to get a home. I love that concept. It's like teaching a man to fish, right? I don't care what your religion is, or if you're atheist, I don't even care. But
I don't care either.
But the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule, regardless of your belief or lack of belief, are still good ways to live, good ways to be, good way to treat others. And there is something to be said for the Judeo-Christian ethic, the morality there. And just simple stuff. And again, believe in God, not believe in God is not part of what I'm saying here, but what they do, helping people help themselves, that to me is fantastic. I'm just, as I say, as far as giving somebody something for nothing, I'm just not that nice.
Yeah.
but I love what Habitat does. So
no, and
when I can, I try to volunteer my time, my skills. As somebody in my 50s now, I've learned a lot about. I'm an avid DIYer. I mean, I could talk to you for hours just on projects I've done in my house and for my friends, but I learned some of those skills over the years working on Habitat houses.
I might hit you up one day and say, hey, how do you rewire this thing, blah blah blah. But I'll say this real quick. I will talk to any patient, and I can do, like I told them, I could do the Christian therapeutic approach, or I could see an atheist, because being an atheist does not mean you're a bad person. It
just means you don't, for whatever reason, have faith like other people do.
That's their choice. And you know what? I got to tell people, if you're my neighbor and you're an atheist, and I say that guy's a wacko because he's an atheist, you know what?
You're the wacko.
Well, I wasn't going to say that,
Well,
but it's
go back to
true.
what I said. You've labeled somebody as X and discounted them because of the way you've labeled them.
Right. But that's not what God wants. He doesn't want people to be judging each other. And also, secondly, my opinion of you is none of your business, and your opinion of me is none of my business. Like, you could think what you want. Like, think I'm crazy.
A good colleague, former colleague of mine, just put it simply: what other people say about me behind my back is none of my business.
I saw a great quote. I saw this great quote that the reason it was beautiful, and I saved it, I snipped it, and I'm going to put it up, is, oh, what was it? It was this guy, and it says, the reason that breakups occur is because God hears the conversations that you don't. Isn't that beautiful? Like, God knows that this person, and I'm not like, listen, if a beautiful woman walked by, I'd be like, hi, like I get stuck, but I know.
What, are you supposed to resist your basic biology?
Right. Well, some people, they get a little crazy with what a Christian is and what this, but God hears, no, God, people removed from your life. That's what it was. God removes people from your life because he hears the conversations you don't, which is so true. It's so true. When you're not around and somebody's talking bad about you, who hears it? God. If you believe, and if you don't, that's fine too. If you believe in the universe, that's fine too. I respect all of you. I could have a beer with an atheist, a Christian, a Catholic, a Buddhist, a Hindu, whoever it is. I might be getting confused now, but I could have it doesn't really matter.
Because you're having one too many, obviously.
Yeah, I set you up for that.
You
so
did.
Listen. So what's next for you? What do you hope is next? Then I have my last.
Right. Well, I got to deal with a couple of things. Just got a couple of trips planned. But what's next for me professionally, I guess, is where you're going with this.
Professionally, personally, whatever.
I don't know. Well, personally, the big change is that we'll be empty nesters with an adult son who lives hundreds of miles away. So that is going to be, a big change. I know it's the natural order of things. If you have children, you teach them, you raise them, you love them to leave the cave, to leave the nest, to go out and be their own person. And you know that, but to say goodbye, it's a difficult thing. And I know I'm not saying goodbye, right? I mean, it's not like I'm never going to see my son again, but it's completely different. Because as an adult, he doesn't need me the way he did. He'll still need me for some things.
He'll need you.
But that relationship is so different, and in some ways very cool that it's more of an equal footing. When your kid's little, you're up here, they're here, but now you're just like that a little bit.
Unless you're Italian, and then they're always gonna.
Oh my God! You reminded me when you said you're Italian kid from Long Island. I had a college suite mate, an almond, Tom Tingatella. I love Tom. I need to get in touch with him. But Tom,
I love Tom too.
Tom would say, I would say Tom would teach Italians to be more Italian. He lived in Mineola, and Tom went to Chaminade. So he had the manners that you would expect somebody who went to a Catholic school to have. Very polite, just impeccable manners when it came to dealing with my mom, my mother-in-law, the ladies. But on the flip side, when you're hanging out with Tom, the sophomoric teenager would come out very quickly. So I've seen both of these. Loved hanging with him. I've lost touch with him, but nothing but fond memories. And I love the expression is you may not remember exact things somebody said, but you always remember how somebody made you feel. And Tom always made me feel just warm and happy and laughing, and I've got nothing but very fond memories for this man.
Is he still alive?
I believe so. Yeah, I did speak to him a few years ago, and he had a family too, and stuff. So I'm lucky. Hey, I didn't tell you this. I married my high school sweetheart. I got my 32nd wedding anniversary coming up in August, and I've known her. We met in Spanish class. She's a year younger than me, but we were in Spanish class. It was the fall of '82 when we met. So
Wow.
I'm just very, very fortunate in that. What's next for me professionally? I don't know. I want to be challenged. I want to grow. I want to get out of my comfort zone. I want to try new things. I don't some people have said, how are you enjoying retirement? I'm like, I didn't retire. I did not retire. I'm too young, and there are too many things I want to do, too many things I want to learn to retire. And I'm hoping that, that doesn't take too long until the universe reveals what's next for me. But right now, I have no idea what that is.
Well, I want to tell you, you should call Tom or Facebook Tom. Just say hi to Tom, because that way, why not? Because that would make him, maybe
Yeah.
he's thinking of you too. And I love the fact that you married your high school sweetheart. I'm going to tell you something. If I could have had a situation like that, I would much prefer because I've been single since 32, and it's just, yeah, great. I've been great. But you know what? I would love to have that partner, because in the end, that's what matters, in my opinion. Finding somebody that loves you enough that they accept you for you, you accept them for them, and you raise a family. And that doesn't mean you have to be married. It doesn't mean that makes you happy, because I might never be married, but I'll be happy. There's a thing called self-intimacies. There's self-respect, self-esteem, and self-intimacy, and they're actually different. Self-intimacy is the ability to be alone without feeling lonely, and that's what I have. And it's a great feeling, because there were times in my life I didn't have that. So
The people have said to me, you married your high school sweetheart, you could have dated, you could have been with all these other women over time, you really missed out. And I say to them, you know what? I've known her since when we met, she was 14 going on 15. And we were friends for a year and a half. It was my high school prom I asked her to, and that's where things went from platonic to romantic. And God, I was so nervous. I was such a chicken. It took me forever to get the courage to ask her out too. And her response was great. She's like, sure, I'd love to. And it was a pretty easy transition. But so I have this history with a woman who, again, I knew her in high school, and I've known her, God, almost 40 years. And to see her grow from this teenager, right? And I say this awkward teenager, but she's like, I was never an awkward teenager. She would correct me. But to see her grow from this to this vibrant, vivacious, sexy woman, right? Who's now taken this journey with me. I tell those people, that's something you'll never have.
no, it's true.
No,
And
I'm okay with that trade-off.
no, it sounds like a great trade-off. I'm very happy for you. I just met you, but I like you, and I'm always happy for people, because like that gentleman I interviewed. There's a gentleman I interviewed. Oh, what was his name? He's a fighter. Bam Bam, his name is. That's his nickname. Bam Bam. Look up Bam Bam MMA. He's fighting in Ohio Fighting League, and now he's on the show. He's in the show. So I'm always very happy for people, and I'm happy for you. And I have to ask you one last question. I promise this is it.
Sure.
Because I won't ask if you're not, but were you a Bruce Lee fan?
A little bit. I mean, he's a little bit before my time. I think what he did, and a little bit that I know of him, between his training regimen, he really went out of his way to obviously look the way he looked. He was incredible, but he was really, as much as I understand, really involved in the nitty-gritty production aspects of the movies he was part of as well. So obviously, he had a tragic end much earlier than he should have. He was died young like his son too. It is tragic and much way too early. But yeah, I haven't seen much in the way of Bruce Lee lately. I know there's that one with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I did meet Kareem Abdul-Jabbar also in Washington, the TV station. He was a little standoffish, if you will. Wasn't there? Maybe he was having a bad day, but that particular day he wasn't as warm and cozy as some of the other folks I had met over the years.
Yeah, well, people have bad days, and I've heard he might be a little shy or just maybe not a people person. But so here's my question to you, because I ask this at the end of every interview. Now, I'm usually interviewing MMA fighters.
Sure.
But so I'm still going to ask you, and I'll give you an example. So if Bruce Lee were alive, he would blank. And you want an example?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll give two examples. If Bruce Lee were alive, he would be on the Joe Rogan podcast.
If Bruce Lee were alive, he would probably have his own form of martial arts, like jujitsu or something else, to be the Lee method, I would think, or whatever. I could see him. He does?
Yeah, it's called Jeet Kune Do.
All right. Well, see, that's how much I know about Bruce Lee.
No, but that's okay because he took from other areas. He knew
Yeah.
that the basic martial art that he was doing wasn't sufficient enough, because if you get a wrestler, so he worked with a guy named Gene LaBelle, and he started incorporating judo and then boxing and all these things. So that's okay. You
So
were
what do you
honest.
think? You seem like Jackie Chan, and I think Jackie Chan is a very talented man. But how much do you think Bruce Lee influenced Jackie Chan?
Well, he did very much so, because they worked together.
Okay.
They worked. They
You're
worked.
teaching me things right now.
No, they worked together. And one time, Jackie Chan said that Bruce Lee hit him too hard, but not really hard. And he pretended he was like, he wanted sympathy from Bruce Lee. He's like, oh, and he's like, you okay? He's like, oh, he tells the story very famously. He's like, I wanted Bruce Lee. I was like, oh, I'm getting attention from Bruce Lee. But my second thing is, if Bruce Lee were alive, he would be verified on Instagram.
Yeah, he would. I still think you wouldn't want to mess with him if he was still alive.
Hell no. I don't
Yeah.
think most people would want to mess with even Jackie Chan. Like,
I mean, if you go back and watch the video. He's fighting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Obviously, it's all staged, but still, to be able to spar with somebody who is 2 feet taller than you, basically, or a foot and a half, whatever it was, who's got the reach of a 747.
yeah.
It's not. It's like when somebody tries to fight Zdeno Chara on the ice on the NHL. It's like, really, he's just like holding you away. Like, come on. So,
Well, I hope you enjoyed this.
yeah, and then, who watches your podcast, by the way? I have no idea. You asked me, I without even doing any research on you, I said, sure.
So no, and I love that. Here's the deal. So the podcast is not out yet, but because I had this serious radio interview, I had to speed up the process of getting my YouTube channel out. And I have like 400,000 followers all across different social media, which
cool.
isn't like a lot, but it's enough.
A lot more than me.
Yeah, well, it's there, and LinkedIn and this and that. It's all over the place. And so I sped up the process, and I'm interviewing fighters who have a fight like this weekend. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste the interview and show it 3 weeks after the fact. So I'm speeding up the process. So I'm getting my YouTube and all that stuff done. So at least I can send those videos out. And then the podcast, I'll get done next week and throw that out there. But there is a.
I hope you felt this was worth your investment in time.
No, it will. It was. I'm sorry. I'm thinking ahead. It absolutely was. This was very enjoyable because some of the fighters, they're very like, "How are you today?" Good.
It's funny you mentioned that before we go. I'm a hockey guy, grew up going to Islander games, and when they had their run 80 to 83, I was in high school. I graduated 84. It was, the Ranger fans are still saying our team's better than you after like the first cup, like go away. And there fewer of them as the dynasty went on. So I've become somewhat of a Caps fan. They're a pretty good club here. I had the chance to interview Nick Backstrom because he was on the verge of, I think, his 1,000th game, easy for me to say, game played. And I had a chance to do that, back in maybe early May or late April as it was coming up. And there are some great people, athletes out there. Nick Backstrom, oh my God, the guy's incredible, right? But he was a tough interview because, I don't know, maybe English isn't his first language, but his answers were very, just a few words here, a few words there, right? And that made it tough to, we still put a nice little story together with them. Don't get me wrong, but when you don't have somebody who's chatty like you and I are, right? There's the extreme where somebody's too chatty. You got to find that sweet spot. Like I said, say something within 15 seconds if you can. Nick's answers are like 3 or 4 seconds, or sometimes 2. So it's like quick. And
who did he play for?
The Capitals. He's centers. He's the one who had set up Ovechkin on so many assists. If you look up Nick Backstrom, number 19 on the Caps, he's one of the greatest centers probably in a generation in the NHL, or arguably, top 5 centers in the NHL. And I think he's incredibly talented hockey player. But I don't see him going to like sports broadcasting post-retirement.
Right.
Unless he does it in Sweden where he's from. Maybe he'll be fantastic in Sweden, but I don't think it's going to happen in an English-speaking country.
I understand.
And I love the guy.
Yeah. I love him too. I never met him, but I'm going to tell you this. When this gets released, which will be shortly, I will send you the link.
Okay.
And if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing it with your family and friends and trying to promote the show, that'd be great.
Will do.
And I'm gonna when I talk to Jill Nicolini, I'm gonna mention your name because
You probably won't know who I am, but that's
no,
okay.
but that's okay. That's okay. I like telling the people, look, if you agree to do this show, here's what I love. People are agreeing to do this show. There are people who are like, hey, can you send me something? Because they don't know. I could talk about like I could say, hey, we're gonna talk about cups today. And this cup is made from, and they're gonna go, what the hell am I doing? So I get it. But you said yes, and I appreciate it. And I hope it was a decent experience for you. And so thank you, Howard Bernstein. Thank you, Howard Bernstein, who was a 20-year vet at WUSA CBS affiliate as a
Meteorologist.
And so thank you so much. And I can't wait to talk to you again. And I'm going to talk to you offline because maybe you know some people that you think I would be interested in talking with.
Plenty of people out there, whether or not they're interested in talking, that's on them. But
well, yeah.
okay,
But
hey,
after
look,
they see,
it was fun. Always like hooking up with a fellow Long Islander who still sounds like it, and who understands what real pizza is and all that other things. That
yeah,
you know, it's weird. You talk about, I will discount. I'm guilty of this myself when we're talking about pizza. So it says, oh, if you tried so and so, I say, where are you from? They go, Maryland. I'm like, so I'm guilty of that myself, especially when it comes to pizza. I am a self-appointed pizza snob. Oh, and pizza people, if anybody who makes pizza for a living is out there, for God's sake, saute your peppers and onions. Don't just cook them raw in the pie. The ovens are on already. It takes a few minutes to saute them, or just pan, olive oil, stick them in, saute them, brings out the sweetness. They are so much better than peppers and onions that are just cooked raw on a pie. It's almost a crime against humanity not to saute them if you're going to.
So this is the agenda of this interview. We need you pizza makers to do what again? We need you
saute your peppers, whether they be green or red, and your onions. My God, sauteed or caramelized onions as opposed to onions that you just slice and cook and bake with the pie. Night and day difference.
Absolutely ridiculous that you people aren't doing that.
Absolutely. It's an outrage. That's one of my major pet peeves about pizza.
Well, mine too now. Because we're like really good friends now. So anyway, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate you. Really cool guy.
And good luck to you with all of this. I hope it's nothing but a tremendous success for you.
Even if it's not, which it will be, I'm successful because in my mind and my heart, I feel successful just being able to talk to people for a living. And trying to help them through issues. But I do appreciate the sentiment of what you were trying to say. So thank you so much.
Trying to say? I think I was very articulate. What do you mean trying to say?
No, you that you did say what you said. Howard, don't start with me, Howard. No, I'm just kidding. No, I know. Thank you so much. Good meeting you, okay?
Yes, be well, take care.
Yeah, I'll put your links in the description. And good talking to you. Enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right. Oh, Howard's going to let me shut it off first. Okay, fine. All right, bye-bye.
You have to say goodbye first.
I always let them shut it off, and then I talk more, but I'm going to shut it off.
Oh, you want me to? You want me to go?
No. Howard, don't fight with me. Howard, don't fight with me. All right, I'll talk to you later, man. Bye-bye. All right.
What a wonderful surprise! A lot of people say, what's that? It's Pat.